interesting development in Europe. They have begun to regulate the search engine Google, and for years, Google has been a go-to tool for millions worldwide, obviously, seamlessly integrating search results for us all, directions, locations, and much more. But if you've noticed, those of you who live in Europe, something's now missing recently. You're not imagining things due to European Union regulation. Google has been forced to remove its maps functionality from within its search results, making a significant shift. It's a true mark in progress in how we interact with the tech giants ecosystem, which is somewhat a borderline monopoly in the way it's been operating for years without any governmental intervention or regulation. But the Digital Markets Act in Europe is shaking up the tech industry and the landscape and the marketplace online, and it's the driving force behind this change. It's called the Digital Markets Act, DMA as it's known there in Europe, and it's regulation designed to challenge the dominance of major tech companies and foster a more competitive digital marketplace introduced to level the playing field and impose new rules on the biggest players, aiming to give users more choice and control over the digital services upon which they rely. And one of the key targets of this legislation ultimately is Google, who's integrated in integration of services like Maps and Calendar and Docs within its search engine has been criticized as stifling competition. So by linking its ecosystem too tightly, Google has effectively ensured thereby that users rarely stray beyond its platforms. That's a good business approach and method and technique, of course, but the DMA in Europe is now forcing Google to unravel some of these connections, starting with Maps. So I encourage the nations of the world to do likewise and stimulate competition in their local business marketplaces, communities, and countries, and provide these trillion-dollar companies such as Google who have invaded personal privacy and data and sold it to other companies without the permission of the users, we the people. That needs to be regulated, and thanks be to God for Europe for taking a stance and beginning to do so, and guiding the nations of the world and how we can operate and stop these monopolistic companies from invading and intruding in every area of our life. Now, I understand Google. I'm a certified digital marketing and e-commerce professional, but I don't worship Google. I value other search engines. I've traveled to 90 nations. I've lived in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Europe. I lived in China, lived in India, and I've noticed in China and India, they don't always allow Google to just take over. China blocks and keeps Google out. They have Baidu. They have their own homegrown search engine. China doesn't allow Facebook. They've got WeChat and other homegrown companies that they work with to keep the money and the focus in country. So there's a lot of wisdom to be learned from Europe, from China, from India, the way they do things. So may God bless the nations of the world. If you need a global business consultant to help you in any of these aspects of industry and commerce and regulatory regimes, I've earned a master's degree in international law, another one in global affairs from New York University. And like I said, I've lived all over the world. I love the people of the world. I love competition. It's good for consumers. It keeps prices down. It upholds our rights. Citizens have rights to protect our data, our privacy, and not have it sold freely without our consent. Even the cookies that are being used online to monitor and watch our use of these internet platforms and browsers and websites, it's very invasive, and that type of data and that knowledge is being sold and utilized in the United States by Amazon and Meta, now known as Meta, formerly called Facebook. Meta owns Facebook, but by reason of all these lawsuits, some of these companies are beginning to create other names and organizations to try to insulate them from lawsuits lest they lose a lot of money. So we need, as the nations of the world to apply pressure and to have there to be more integrity and regulatory oversight. So God bless you, governmental leaders, prime ministers, governors, mayors, and officials in government who are beginning to think and envision how you would like to regulate these industries to protect your people and stimulate your economies and make the world a better place for us all.